Hello, hello. This is the My Artifact episode number 3626, maybe, or 27. I'm not really sure. Today's date is October 6, 2025. It's been almost like a morning at 8:27 a.m. Okay. Let's just jump into the question. Okay, let's go. All right. Question is, what if human merge with a machine like cyborg? Okay, that's a really good question. Okay, first of all, what exactly is this question? And have you listening this? It's a like basically I'm listening it very carefully, like very like okay. Let me give you the context. Okay, yeah. Um, I realize I'm not really sure. I realize that ki in summer usually you will get noises from everywhere, and because of you get lot of noises, um, um, I don't know how do I supposed to explain. It's very difficult to explain. Okay, yeah. I don't know. Might be you kind of like simply sense it, or maybe you experience this thing. Is that ki after the rain, na? After the rain, there is a kind of like a simply pocket created in surrounding temperature or surrounding that the the sound can heard. It's like that na ki um, if you are in alone in empty auditorium, you feel like that the way that you're talking is really loud, right? And everyone might gonna hear you, things like that, in empty auditorium, by the way. But when that auditorium fill with hundreds of people, then in that particular case your sound is not really that much kind of like a something that not really that much loud. Oh yeah, have you ever feel like that? Like I don't know, it's a kind of like a something things that I feel, because like usually in the winter, or not winter, it's after you like after the rainfall. Okay, like after the rainfall there is a very silent atmosphere create. Okay, yeah, in that particular atmosphere the cricket is kind of like a crooking crook and stuff like that. And you are kind of like a simply the your voice is kind of like a feel little bit of loud from someone point of perspective when you are trying to talk. Like last night same thing happened. Last night I was kind of like a recording my artifact. Okay, yeah. And I was kind of like a simply recording my like original voice and things and stuff like that. Yeah, I was kind of like a went inside the kind of like a thought process. I'm trying to explain stuff and stuff. After I record my artifact, my sister told me that he like you're talking really loudly. I was like, what? Yeah. And I was like, dude, I'm talking really loudly. And I was like so embarrassed at that time because of that key. Like I'm recording artifact and might be someone could kind of like somebody listening to me and stuff and things like that. It's like really like awkward. And another thing is that yeah, I usually record at kind of like a somebody edge of my rooftop, where kind of like a somebody I could see the roads and peoples and things like that. So if I talk that loud, then probably those people might gonna hear that stuff. So I was kind of like a little bit of embarrassed and things like that. Not really that embarrassed. I realized that it's not really that thing, but still it just like it feels like that ki I shouldn't supposed to record over here. I should supposed to record kind of like a something the very other edge of the my rooftop, where kind of like a something in other side there is a very less people are actually exist. Whatever. Okay, let's jump right into the question. Okay, the question is that, wait, where is this question? I just completely forgot that. Okay, yeah, what if human merge with a machine like a cyborg? Okay, yeah. First of all, what exactly is this question? First of all, this is the what if question. Now, why am I asking this question to myself? What if question is always really interested way to kind of like give the answer and things like that. It's really amazing to kind of like simply just like it's really good to kind of like give the answer. It felt really right. It felt really good. Okay, it's very hard to explain, but it's a kind of like a things that ki what if kind of like what if question is always kind of like a create a new reality, and I'm trying to give the answer regarding about that reality and stuff like it's yeah. By the way, disclaimer, the information that I'm trying to tell you in this question, in this artifact, is not exactly right. It's not exactly wrong either. Consider it's kind of like a simply empty auditorium, and I'm trying to kind of like a simply a dancing. I am not a good dancer, but I'm kind of like a simply dancing as possible as I could dance as much as good. Okay, yeah. So disclaimer already given to you. Okay, the information that I'm trying to tell you is a kind of like not exactly right. It's not exactly wrong. It's completely wrong. It's completely unfiltered, and yeah. So let's just talk about that. What if human became cyborg? Um, I kind of like a something like a couple of year ago. I was kind of like a play the game called Cyberpunk. 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 Yeah, Cyberpunk or Cyber City or Cybertruck. I don't know. There are so many kind of like a name as a cyber. The game of the name is a Cyberpunk. Cyberpunk or what is that game? Is that cyber like a Cyberpunk 2027 or what? Let me SYBER cyber. Okay, Cyberpunk. Yeah, Cyberpunk 2027. Sorry, 2077 Cyberpunk. Okay, so I was kind of like a playing this game like couple of year ago. Like basically, yeah, like when I was kind of like have a gaming YouTube channel. Now I was kind of like a playing this game. Okay, yeah, Cyberpunk 2027. Sorry, 2077. Sorry, 2077. So by the way, this game is kind of like only based on kind of like a only futuristic. It kind of like a tell us that ki, a humans would kind of like a something live with a kind of like a only machine. Okay, yeah. Machine means not the kind of like a machine that you think it is. The machine that actually inside of their mind or inside their like basically is this thing that ki they have kind of like a something that arms is kind of like a robotic arms or robotic leg or things like that. Why they have that thing? Because of that ki robotic arms or robotic leg or robotic kind of like a body capable enough to kind of like lift the very heavy weight and things and that, as a normal human body is not able to lift that heavy weight or stuff like that. So that's why they kind of like cut their original body parts and kind of like attach the this kind of like a stuff. Probably I'm not really sure about the exact idea regarding about that game, but this is what kind of like a reality was over there. Okay, yeah. Now in this game they actually kind of like a simply imagine such a scenario their human would be a cyborg, and they kind of like a design such a game that what kind of like a somebody cyborg or humanoid cyborg could do such a thing, like what kind of like a capability and stuff like that. It not only talk about the strength, it actually talk about kind of like a multiple upgrades, ethical hacking, the way that we could kind of like a manipulate other devices and kind of like a system, the frequency. There is a lot of stuff that kind of like is really mentioned in the game, which is really cool by the way. Okay, yeah, if you kind of like wanted to play this game, just play this game. You definitely have to be experience this thing. It's a kind of like a, telling a kind of like a future regarding about like basically after 50 year what would be that kind of like a reality and things like that, which is I think that might be almost 60% right. Okay, yeah, I'm not really sure about kind of like a cyborg and things like that, a humanoid cyborg. Why? because like humanoid cyborg is a kind of like a something just not good. Okay, yeah, let me tell you one thing why. If we really require robots, we can build the robots. Now, what if basically if like let's just say in the accident I lost my arm, and I kind of like somebody attached the prosthetic arm. Okay, yeah, prosthetic arm means like that, a kind of like a arm which kind of like a somebody like a kind of like a metal bar is a kind of like a metal arm, but it kind of like a control by your mind. How is actually happened? It actually happened by the kind of like a somebody neural connection between the your kind of like a something prosthetic hand and kind of like a, your brain and things like that. I don't know how it works, but this technology actually exists right now. Okay, so if we like basically why like we could kind of like attach that kind of like assembly arm and things like that. But let me tell you one thing now, it's not really good at that. Okay, because let me tell you one thing, our human body is not built in that way. Our human body is a kind of like a simply try to prevent those foreign particle and things like that. We have a kind of like a simply inbuilt our kind of like a simply secure system, the new the immunity system, like a white blood capsules, kind of like simply try to prevent the foreign particle and things like that. Okay, yeah. And if you kind of like attach kind of like a simply a human part of body, like basically a kind of like a machine in a human part body, it would be like a, I don't know, I'm not really sure about that particular stuff, but it was not that thing. Okay, yeah, it's like basically this thing that future might take at least like a 500 year probably. Okay, yeah, but still now I don't really think that this kind of like a somebody the like a machine and andro humanoid thing would be kind of like a possible and things like it will be like, I don't know, yeah. There is like you can get a lot of kind of like a some advantage. First of all, is that if you have kind of like some robotic arms or robotic leg, you can run faster. You can kind of like lift the weight. You don't really get sick or things like that because there is a yeah, nanobots would kind of like simply repair our body inside of us and things and that and that. There is a very big question actually arise that ki, who are you then? Are you human or are you robot or are you half human or you half robot or what are you? Oh yeah, because it's very kind of like a simply just very kind of like a simply just, I don't know, it's a very creates a line that existence of human. Okay, yeah, and this is what kind of like a some very problem. Another thing is that he what I'm trying to tell you, if this kind of like a upgrade, if this kind of like a something attach some sort of body or kind of like a something that key, if we could kind of like attach our like a machine body parts. Okay, if that particular surgery became really expensive, then probably only rich people could kind of like a somebody afford that thing. Poor people might not afford and things like that, so it would kind of like a create a divide. Okay, yeah, basically the people who already kind of like assembly divided by the culture and things, and right now we have kind of like another thing that we would supposed to be divided by the android human and kind of like a normal human probably. So it was a like a very disaster situation. Okay, another thing is that key jobs. Okay, yeah, but probably is this thing na ki, why am I thinking like basically is this thing I'm not trying to accept this future. Even if like someone told me that ki, this future is kind of like something really right and things and that, I don't know, it's very hard to accept this thing for me. Okay, why? Because let me tell you one thing. Okay, first of all is that let's just imagine that ki, we have this kind of like simply a robotic arm. Okay, yeah, which can work with kind of like a chip inside of them. Okay, yeah. Now that robotic arm I have, that can I lift the weight, that I could do kind of like a very crazy shit. Who is actually controlling this arm? My brain or that chipset? Yeah, who is actually controlling them? Okay, this is the only one part. Another part is that if we could kind of like a something install this kind of like a robotic arm, uh, in our body parts or stuff like that. That means we could kind of like install the chipset, or kind of like a max power of chipset like a Snapdragon 8 Gen 8 Elite, things like that chipset would kind of like a fit inside our human brain. Then who is actually control your body, your brain or that chipset? Okay, yeah. Another thing is that your brain is not hack, but chipset can hack by coding languages, right? Like it's not really that the brain cannot hack, but probably is this thing the brain, like basically whatever you do you kind of like a control, but the chipset is controlling you. Then probably who are you? Are you human? Are you robot? Are you robo human? Or are you, yeah, it's a very, create a very kind of like a some disturbing image regarding about human, that key we started asking question that what is exactly human. Another thing is that ki, the evolution of humans is always rely on creativity, invention, innovation and things like that. Okay, probably if we became slightly little bit robot, robots can't create things, robots can't think, robot like maybe there will be a kind of like a something advanced machine that came could think and stuff like that, but the innovations is actually came from human thought process at the moment. At okay, yeah, mostly almost like a 99.99%, like almost 100% is actually kind of like an invention by humans. Humans are kind of like a pioneer of kind of like a something invention and things like that, because when we need it and when we need it we kind of like invent things, right? Now if we have this kind of like a something just robot and things and that, we might not invent things, we just like basically is this thing now, why are you kind of like upgrading this kind of like a somebody robot arm and things like that for strength, for kind of like a you can run faster, you can do, we already have this kind of like a for this we already have a lot of appliances that could do that thing. If you wanted to lift the weight, we probably have a bulldozer, we probably have a cranes. If you wanted to run faster, we have a car that could kind of like a go really faster and things like that. So probably is this thing for the kind of like a strength and speed and things like that, we already create such a robots, we already create such a machine that can do really well. Then why do we supposed to be kind of like add that thing inside our body? It's just like it doesn't really make any sense or things like that. Like basically just imagine that ki in an accident you lost your leg or you lost your arm or things like that. In that particular situation, if you kind of like somebody install your prosthetic arm or prosthetic leg, in that particular case, yeah, that is okay, yeah. But probably is this thing, it's not really kind of like somebody that stuff that I don't know, dude. Okay, yeah. This kind of like a reality that this kind of like a somebody imagine. I'm not really accepting this thing. I'm like basically I'm kind of like somebody really proud to be as a kind of like a somebody human. I'm really proud to be a kind of like a somebody born as a human and kind of like a things that ki I would do the things that I want. Okay, it gives me freedom. It gives me a sense of living. It gives me kind of like a somebody that ki I'm exist. A machine cannot feel that it exists or not, probably. But why do you think that this android human is not happen? Why do you think that? Okay, we are living in the world where like one person cannot decide everything. No, definitely not. It's kind of like somebody, we are humans, we are living in different part of the world, different part of the world have different opinion regarding about how they live, how they act and how they do things like that. Okay, yeah, if the one country decided that kind of like somebody we should supposed to be install android humanoid and things like that, probably other country might not do that thing. Yeah, it's kind of like a things that na ki we are humans and we are not kind of like somebody always kind of like somebody like we are not always like we are human and we are never really kind of like somebody that is settled with a one decision. Even if that decision is so right, still there is a kind of like some people say that this is really wrong and things like that. And that is what humans, that is what kind of like called as a human, and that is kind of like somebody responsible for growth too. Let me tell you how. Let's just imagine that ki 100 out of 90 people says that ki stealing some sort of money is wrong thing, and 10% people might say that no, stealing is not wrong thing. Okay, yeah. So what is exactly is this thing? Is the stealing a money is a right thing or wrong thing? Yeah, obviously it's a wrong thing. Yeah. Then why not those 10 people didn't really accept that stuff? Because of that, those 10 people is actually come from very different part of the world, and probably stealing money might be a kind of like some option to survive for them. They don't really see there is a kind of like a way to survive the life and things like that. So they might think that stealing is not a wrong thing. It's a kind of like a simply the simply the kind of like a simply for sort of survival and stuff like that. What I'm trying to tell you is this thing that humans never really kind of like a simply basically things that ki like acceptance, like 100% acceptance from the human. You never really get that thing. There is always kind of like a some people kind of like a say that this is wrong and this is wrong, even if that step or even if that kind of like a statement is how right it is. Some people kind of like a say this is wrong and things like that. But why is kind of like something really essential for growth? Why does, if I'm kind of like a say that stealing money is a wrong thing and 10 people kind of like consider that it's a right thing, why this kind of like a something that particular people are responsible for growth and things like that? Because let's just, if I'm trying to imagine this particular example, okay, yeah, if the 10 people, like if the 90 people are kind of like a thinking that stealing money is a wrong thing, and 10 people kind of like a thing is that stealing money is a right thing, then what could exactly happen? It happens that basically those 10 people are kind of like a responsible for kind of like a steal the money and things like that. Probably they might steal money or they might not steal the money, but one thing for sure is that they already have a experience regarding about how the thief can steal the money. So probably is this thing, those 10 people are kind of like a simply knows how thief are actually think regarding about how they steal the money, and they would kind of like a simply create that a particular a response team or kind of like a system that that thief might not steal some sort of money or things like that. Okay, okay, what exactly is this thing? What I'm trying to tell you, what exactly is that? Okay, a normal person, like basically I cannot steal money. I'm not really capable enough. I'm not really like basically if someone told me that we are going to rob the bank, may I able to do that? No, I am not. Like basically my confidence will gonna lose. I will kind of like shake my body. Like basically my every part of the body says that this is wrong, this is the wrong, this is the wrong. Why are you saying this thing? Why are you doing this thing? It kind of like somebody shaking my body and things like that. Oh yeah. So in my natural sense of decision, I might not kind of like somebody rob the bank. Okay, yeah. No, never really at all. Yeah, because my body, my thought process and everything is not kind of like a create in that way. Okay, yeah. So if my body, my thought process is not actually create in that way, how do I supposed to create such a system that kind of like a something that prevent people from robbing the bank and things like that? Okay, what is exactly what I'm trying to tell you? I'm trying to tell you is like let's just imagine a kind of like a somebody. I was tasked that I have to create a system that kind of like a simply system that a thief cannot steal that particular stuff. So what should I supposed to do? I might kind of like install the surveillance. I might kind of like install the kind of like a somebody the footprint, like not kind of like a thumbprint, kind of like a somebody transaction or thumbprint kind of like a in and out and things like that. Everything is actually monitored and stuff like that. Okay, yeah. So this is kind of like assembly the stuff that I install. Okay, from my point of perspective, because whatever I kind of like that key, this kind of like a valuable asset I should supposed to be protect. Okay, yeah. But this is kind of like a very basic level of things like that. Okay, yeah. If I install this thing and that, a hacker or kind of like a thief has a kind of like a somebody very strong information regarding about how to hack the surveillance camera, how to hack the kind of like assembly thumbprint sensor or things like that. And basically a thief can easily get inside, buy some sort of like a basically steal those kind of like a valuable asset, and can go on without even knowing. Like I'm kind of like a thinking that key in my surveillance camera I'm actually seeing everything is really right, everything's really good, but inside in reality it kind of like is only very dark. So what is really what I'm trying to tell you is this thing, I am not really aware of that ki thief might kind of like somebody hack my surveillance camera and things like that. I don't know that. Okay, yeah. And if I wanted to build any kind of like a firewall and things like that, I am not really capable enough because I don't really think like a kind of like a somebody thief and stuff like that. Okay, but instead of me, let's just kind of like a something my authorities actually hire a person who actually a kind of like a some thief in his life. He actually kind of like went to the jail and things like that, and after he pursue his jail and things and that, like kind of like that authorities kind of like give the job that key, you have to protect this particular asset from thief and things like that. Now that particular person who already is a thief, he already knew that where should thief could steal this particular stuff. He knows everything. He kind of like understand what exactly point hole loopholes that a thief might kind of like enter into this way and that way and that way, and he would kind of like create a perfect firewall for protecting that asset. He would kind of like install multiple things regarding about how do you supposed to stop that stuff, which is really crazy. And let me tell you one thing, as I mentioned, the different kind of like a people creates a innovation. This is the kind of like a innovation, a person who kind of like a that this person was kind of like a one of the kind of like a 10% of the people who is kind of like a say that ki stealing money is the right thing. This is that person who is kind of like a only building this kind of like a firewall and kind of like a all those things that controlling to prevent this kind of like asset to not to rob and things like that. Do you get it? So different kind of like people are responsible for a growth. Okay, yeah. If you still not really understand, let me give you a context. Okay, yeah. Let's just say that ki let's just say that ki there is kind of like only 100 people. Okay, yeah. And you actually give them command that ki okay, what is at least this thing? Okay, what is at least this thing that key you actually give them command that you have to do a particular stuff. Okay, yeah. Now 100 out of kind of like only some people kind of like do the stuff, some people kind of like somebody not to do the stuff and things like that. Okay, yeah. Because of some people are not doing their stuff, it's kind of like somebody really essential for me to understand why they are not doing it that, and kind of like somebody making sure that they should supposed to be do their work. So I kind of like build the system and things, and that system is actually created, that system is actually kind of like somebody created is because of some people are not actually doing their job and things like that. So impurity or kind of like somebody a wrong thing or kind of like a different kind of like somebody people are responsible for growth and things like that. So let me tell you one thing, the world that we are living right now is very different kind of like some people have different opinion and thoughts and things and that, and that's good thing, that's good thing. It creates a growth, it creates a kind of like a somebody the kind of like a found out that kind of like a somebody the something the thing that I don't know how to supposed to explain this stuff. You already understand what I'm trying to tell you. It is that it's kind of like a somebody like let's just say that if you think that in Afghanistan the terrorists actually kind of like occupied the entire country and this might be kind of like something very catastrophic and things like that, but this is our point of perspective. From them point of perspective, they might think that this is kind of like something new freedom for them. Basically is this thing, the reality that we are kind of like looking at is not the reality that we want. Like basically is this thing, whatever exactly right is not exactly right. We just think that exactly right, but that is not. Okay, yeah. Like basically we thought that, let's just take a simple example. In the Afghanistan, Taliban actually take over the entire kind of like country and things like that. We think that is wrong. that ki kind of like a somebody the terrorists kind of like a take all the country and things like that. It's kind of like a somebody wrong, but might be that is not wrong, that is a right. It's a kind of like a somebody looking at a very different point of perspective. A perspective is a kind of like a somebody very different than each other, and this is what kind of like is only responsible for growth and things like that. Like basically the growth that you and kind of like a we are kind of like a thing that a growth might be kind of like comes from the stable country, a good economy and things and that. But for the Afghanistan point of perspective, they might think growth is actually come from the happiness and things. I don't know what they will gonna do regarding about make sure their country is good, and I don't know, but it's kind of like somebody is this thing. We are filled with lot of different kind of like a people. Sometimes it kind of like a feels wrong, but in the future it kind of like a feels right, and that is good thing. That is kind of like me responsible for growth and things like that. So this is what it is. Now if every person has a kind of like a that chip that install in their brain or things or that or stuff like that, we will become not human, we will become kind of like a somebody android person, and we are very powerless when we are install that particular stuff. Because let me tell you one thing, we can't run faster, we can't fly, we don't really have big fur to kind of like a somebody sustain the winter and things like that. What kind of like a somebody things that we have which is kind of like a different than other species? Our brain. And because of our brain, we are kind of like utilizing our brain to create this reality, create this world. Look around yourself. This building, this kind of like assembly cars, the bikes, the everything that you are seeing, how this actually created. It's actually created by your brain. This is your biggest asset, right? When you install those kind of like a machine part inside our body and things like that, there is a lot of question actually arise that who we are. That is not a good thing, probably. So what is actually my opinion regarding about this android human and stuff like that? I think that ki, I don't know, I haven't really seen the future, and probably might be we have kind of like a things that ki, some people kind of like install those kind of like a machine body parts and things and that I don't know about that, but I don't know. It's like that now. I'm kind of like only giving any opinion regarding about. I don't know, yaar. Do you kind of like wanted to install those kind of like assembly machine body parts and things like that? Well, no, I don't want to. Okay, yeah. Like basically, I can't run like a cheetah, but I can run. It kind of like good for me. I can't lift the weight kind of like somebody. The elephant does it, but I can lift a little bit weight that kind of like somebody just matter for me or right. Okay, yeah. I cannot see like a eagle that kind of like somebody zooms in and things and that. But whatever I'm seeing, I'm kind of like a privilege that I have vision and stuff like that. Hi, if I kind of like lost my leg or lost my hand or lost my something arms and things like that, and I can't function the way that I should supposed to be do, so I would kind of like simply install the prosthetic arm and prosthetic things that would kind of like simply help me to live my life. Okay, yeah, it not entered in my kind of like a brain, it does not kind of like a interpret my thought process and things like that, but it kind of like a somebody just give me a stable way to kind of like a somebody. I don't know how it's very the line is really blur, and probably the way that I'm thinking might be completely wrong or maybe completely right. Not really sure about that. All right, this is it. I should supposed to be end here, and thank you.